Hi, I'll be making an Ohara far view landscape arrangement. And in order to create it, I'm going to be using some sheepos to stabilize the branches in my container. So let me begin by showing you the placement of the sheepos. So you need a 3-ring sheepo, and you're going to place it in this configuration, kind of like a backward 7, and place it in the upper left-hand corner of your container, behind the center line. And then you're going to use a 2-ring sheepo, and you're going to use it in this configuration, kind of vertical, and you're going to place it in the lower right-hand corner of the container, kind of like this. Okay, the sheepos are in place, so now let me begin by inserting what's called the boku, or a large branch. So this is a far view arrangement, and so when creating far view arrangements, what you focus on is actually the trees. Near view, it's flowers. Middle view is more bushes. But far view, you're at the edge of a field or on the banks of a lake, and you're looking across, and you see a trunk, you see a tree growing there. And so you take a larger branch of the material, and you cut it short and insert it in the opening at the back of the sheepo. So this large opening here. This will give you the impression of a trunk, okay? So all the other branches that I insert, I'm going to try to keep as close to the base of the trunk as possible to make it look like each branch is growing out from this trunk. So the first branch will be the subject. And I can either insert it in the same hole as this big branch or in the one behind it. What I, again, want to do is make it look like it's growing out of that trunk. And I'm going to use a brace to keep it in place. Okay. For the secondary, I actually am going to extend it a little further than we normally would. And that's because we need that length to give the overall arrangement the correct balance. And so I'm going to insert, and again, if I can insert it in the same hole that's as the large branch, that's great. If not, I'll insert it as close to there as possible. So in this case, I'm going to insert it in the small front opening. And in order to get it to insert, and so I can put a stay, I cut off part of the branch, which allows me a little more control. Okay. So we have our subject and secondary branches. I'm going to add a filler. There's a lot of space here, so I'm going to insert a filler sort of in the back here. Let me see, maybe this one. And what I'm going to try to do is crack it and break the stem so that I can get the right angle I need. And in this case, I may actually be able to insert it okay. Now I'm going to add another low branch filler to come forward. And again, what I'm trying to do is crack the branch so I can get a curve but not break it so that it's not, it doesn't fall to two pieces. And I'm trying to actually insert it in the same opening as the trunk. Okay, so I have the trunk in this large opening, the subject in this smaller opening in the back, the secondary in this small opening in front of the trunk. In the same hole as the trunk, I have the two side fillers. So one's in the lower right-hand corner and one's in the upper right-hand corner of this large opening. So now that I have my tree in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually place the ground cover. And the reason for that is for my object group, I'm going to use azalea. And the stems of the azalea are very thin. So it'll be easier to insert and stabilize the azalea if I have the ground cover already in place. So for the ground cover, I'm going to be using this Asparagus Fern, Asparagus retrofractus. And it's from my yard. All this material is from my yard. And so I like using this because it gives you that same feeling as the traditional club moss that's used for ground cover. And so I'm just going to begin cutting off the tips of the stems and gathering them together and then inserting them. And I was always taught to always start at the base of the trunk when inserting the ground cover. One, you have something to latch onto, so the leaves of the asparagus fern will latch onto the sides of the branches, they'll be inserted in the sheep bows, and then as you continue, the leaves will latch on to the cluster of stems you've placed before it. So I'm going to continue this until I have about 2/3 of the surface covered and 1/3 will show the water. Okay? So I finished placing all the ground cover. So now I can actually start placing the object group. And in this case, I'm going to use azalea. So let me trim this. Now we're going to use the azalea a little lower than we typically would if it were a standard upright style because we want to give the impression of maybe you're at the edge of the woods and this is a bush blooming close to this old tree. And so if you made it too big, the proportions would be wrong. So in order to balance it, so now, and because I placed the ground cover, it's a little easier to get these branches to stay. And if I need to add a little more, get the right angle. Let me see, one more. So this is the completed Ohara far view landscape arrangement using the one trunk method. We're using Japanese apricot or ume for the subject secondary group, azalea for the object group, and then this asparagus fern for the ground cover. And for far view, you want to make sure the ground cover is as level as possible. Again, if you picture yourself viewing this scene from across a field, you won't be able to see the small differences in the ground cover. So you want to make it all look fairly even and at the rim of the container or slightly below. Okay. Make sure that all the branches that emanate from the subject secondary group are close to the base of the boku, or the main trunk. That will give you the impression of a large tree. Thank you.